I hate those male, God, I hate those male cops real bad because they're dirtballs.
Have you ever wondered what someone might ask for when they know their time is up? In this video, we reveal 11 unsettling and unforgettable last wishes of death row inmates. From bizarre food requests to shocking final words, these stories offer a rare and chilling glimpse into the minds of those facing the ultimate punishment.
I'm not the person they try to portray me to be, you know what I mean? I'm just like anyone else. I just messed up bad, you know what I mean?
Prepare to explore the darkest corners of crime and consequence. Let's get started. Number 11, Patrick Brian Knight. Patrick Brian Knight is remembered for a brutal double murder that shook Amarillo, Texas in 1991. Born in 1968, Knight's descent into darkness culminated in a heinous crime committed on August 27, 1991, alongside accomplice Robert Bradfield. Their victims, Walter and Marianne Werner, a couple in their 50s, were abducted from their home and locked in their basement as the pair demanded money. Later, the Werners were driven to a remote countryside location where Knight forced them to kneel and coldly executed them with gunshots to the back of their heads. Displaying no remorse, Knight returned to his trailer and slept. The investigation soon uncovered the grisly details, with Knight confessing and leading authorities to the victims' bodies. Bradfield received 2 life sentences for his role in the murders. Knight, however, appeared disturbingly detached as he awaited his fate on death row. On June 26, 2007, at the age of 39, Knight was executed by lethal injection. His unsettling final statement was, "I said I was going to tell a joke. Death has set me free. That's the biggest joke. I deserve this." He then cryptically added, "I am not Patrick Brian Knight, and y'all can't stop this execution now." Knight's words revealed a man grappling with his fate, though his demeanor suggested neither redemption nor remorse. His execution brought closure to a grieving community. Number 10, Thomas Douglas Arthur. Thomas Douglas Arthur's story is a complex and unsettling legal saga marked by accusations of contract killing, multiple convictions, and a steadfast claim of innocence that persisted for decades. Arthur was convicted in the 1982 murder of Troy Wicker in Alabama, a crime allegedly arranged by Judy, who hired Arthur to kill her husband after an affair. Arthur, however, maintained his innocence, arguing that Judy falsely accused him to avoid a death sentence. His legal journey was filled with twists and delays. His first 2 convictions were overturned, but a 3rd conviction in 1991 stood. Over the years, his execution dates were repeatedly stayed, and his case became emblematic of the prolonged and often convoluted nature of death penalty cases. As his final execution date approached in 2017, Arthur made an unexpected request. Citing a severe back injury, he asked to be executed by firing squad, believing it would be less painful than lethal injection. He argued that the method would cause less suffering, but his request was denied. Instead, Arthur was executed by lethal injection on May 26, 2017, at the age of 75. Arthur's appeal for a firing squad underscored the ethical and practical concerns surrounding execution methods, adding further complexity to the ongoing debate over capital punishment. His case serves as a grim reminder of the challenges within the death penalty process, the delays in legal proceedings, and the intricacies of the criminal justice system, making it a significant chapter in the history of American capital punishment. Number 9, James Edward Smith. James Edward Smith's life took a dark turn, culminating in a shocking crime and an even stranger final chapter. Born in Kentucky in 1952, his criminal path reached its peak in March 1983 when he entered the Union Life Insurance Company in Texas, armed and masked, intending to rob the establishment. Inside, he confronted employee Deborah Renee Wilson, who was counting money. As she sought cover behind a file cabinet, Smith grew agitated. When Larry Don Rojas, the district manager, approached to comply with Smith's demands, he was ordered back to the window. Without warning, Smith shot Rojas in the chest, killing him instantly. Smith fled the scene but was quickly apprehended by office workers and bystanders in a nearby parking lot. The stolen money was recovered, and Smith was charged with murder. During his trial, his behavior raised eyebrows, including an attempted escape from the courtroom. In 1984, Smith was convicted and sentenced to death. His mother's plea for clemency, citing mental incompetence, temporarily delayed his execution. Despite claiming innocence, Smith expressed a strong readiness to die. On June 26, 1990, he was executed by lethal injection. His final statement maintained his innocence but referenced his spiritual beliefs, including Hare Krishna, voodoo, and black magic practices. Smith's case was marked by controversy, as evidence suggested his trial should have been reviewed by the Supreme Court. His execution, coupled with his bizarre final remarks and spiritual references, cemented his place as one of the most enigmatic figures in U.S. criminal history. Number 8. Johnny Frank Garrett. Johnny Frank Garrett's life and death remains shrouded in mystery and debate. Born on December 24, 1963, Garrett became infamous for the 1981 murder of Sister Tadea Benz, a 76-year-old Catholic nun in Amarillo, Texas. At just 17, he was accused of raping and murdering Sister Tadea inside the St. Francis Convent, located across the street from his home. Garrett was quickly arrested, convicted, and sentenced to death after a lengthy trial. Despite a temporary reprieve in 1992, following a plea for clemency from Pope John Paul II, his execution proceeded. Supporters argued his conviction was based on flawed evidence and highlighted his claims of innocence, childhood abuse, and possible multiple personality disorder. On February 11, 1992, Garrett was executed by lethal injection at the age of 28. His final meal was a simple request for ice cream. While official records state he gave no final statement, some accounts claim he said, "I'd like to thank my family for loving me. The rest of the world can kiss my ever-loving ass." Garrett's case continues to provoke debate about justice, innocence, and the legal system's flaws. Number 7. William Bonin. William George Bonin, infamously known as the Freeway Killer, left a disturbing legacy in American criminal history with his brutal series of murders between May 1979 and June 1980. Bonin is believed to have killed at least 21 young male victims, many of whom were hitchhikers, schoolboys, or male prostitutes. The victims, aged 12 to 19, were often described as slender and pale, reflecting a disturbing pattern in Bonin's choice of targets. Once he abducted his victims, he would overpower, torture, sexually assault, and then kill them. His preferred method of murder was strangulation, often using the victim's own clothing, such as t-shirts. Bonin's sadistic methods grew more extreme over time. He took pleasure in inflicting pain, sometimes forcing victims to drink hydrochloric acid or using ice picks to impale them. His escalating cruelty demonstrated an increasing satisfaction in the suffering of others. On February 23, 1996, as Bonin faced execution, he made an unusual request for his last meal: 2 large pizzas, 3 pints of ice cream, and 3 packs of Coca-Cola. This indulgent meal seemed oddly disconnected from the severity of his crimes, leading many to believe it reflected Bonin's lack of remorse. During his final interview, Bonin claimed he couldn't control his urge to kill and denied responsibility for the harm he had caused. His last words were cold and detached, offering no remorse or acknowledgement of his victims. Bonin's story serves as a chilling reminder of a man completely disconnected from the pain he inflicted. Number 6. Jean Hathorn. Jean Hathorn's life took a dark turn that led to a brutal crime and a strange final request that captured public attention. On October 19, 1984, Hathorn and his accomplice, James Lee Bethard, devised a plan to murder Hathorn's family and claim a $150,000 inheritance. The victims were Hathorn's father, Gene Sr., his wife Linda, and their teenage son, Marcus. Greed and the desire for the family's wealth drove the crime. However, the plan quickly unraveled when investigators discovered that Hathorn's father had recently changed his will, cutting him out of the inheritance. In an attempt to mislead authorities, Hathorn planted cigarette butts and African-American human hairs near the crime scene. Despite his efforts, the investigation led back to him, and he was arrested. During his trial, Hathorn tried to shift the blame onto Bethard, claiming he was just an observer in the murders. Bethard, convicted in a separate trial, maintained his innocence until his execution. Hathorn, however, continued to appeal his conviction, citing his father's abuse as a motive for his violent actions. Despite his efforts, his appeals were denied, and he awaited execution. In a surprising turn, Hathorne made an unusual final request. He asked for his body to be turned into fish food and fed to goldfish as part of an art installation. Hathorne explained that this request was a statement against capital punishment, a commentary on the system. Artists Julian Bourne and Marco Everest were enlisted to carry out the plan, which involved freezing Hathorne's body and feeding it to fish. However, his death sentence was commuted to 3 life terms in prison, and the bizarre request was abandoned. Hathorne's case remains a disturbing example of how violence, family dysfunction, and the justice system can collide, offering a chilling glimpse into his disturbed state of mind. Number 5. John Henry Ramirez. At the age of 38, John Henry Ramirez committed a murder so brutal it left a lasting impact on both his community and the family of the victim. On the night of his crime, Ramirez attacked 46-year-old Pablo Castro, a convenience store worker, as Castro was taking out the trash. Without provocation, Ramirez slashed Castro's throat and stabbed him 29 times, all for just $1.25. At the time, Ramirez had been on a 3-day drug binge, and this crime was part of a series of robberies he committed with 2 women. The senseless murder devastated Castro's family and shocked the entire local community. Ramirez's case would become a lengthy legal battle, marked by delays and a slow-moving justice system. However, during this period, Ramirez experienced a profound personal transformation. He turned to his faith, which became a central part of his life. As his execution date drew closer, he requested to pray on his knees, seeking spiritual comfort in his final moments. In March, the U.S. Supreme Court made a groundbreaking decision that would directly affect Ramirez's case. The court ruled that death row inmates could have their spiritual advisors present and touch them during their execution. This ruling reshaped the way spiritual care is provided to inmates during their final moments. On the day of his execution, Ramirez's spiritual advisor, Dana Moore, stood by his side and offered a prayer for peace. Afterward, Ramirez turned toward Pablo Castro's family, who were watching through a window, and expressed his remorse. He told them, "I hope this helps you find closure," and added words of love for his own family. As the lethal injection began to take effect, Ramirez briefly snored before becoming still and was pronounced dead 14 minutes later. His death marked the end of a tumultuous journey from violence to spiritual redemption, raising important questions about the potential for change and the complexities of the criminal justice system, especially in matters of faith. Number 4. Jeffrey David Matthews. Jeffrey David Matthews' path to death row began with a shocking crime that devastated his community. Born on September 28, 1972, Matthews was involved in the brutal murder of his great-uncle, Otis Earl Short, on January 27, 1994. Alongside accomplice Tracy Dyer, Matthews planned to rob Otis but escalated to violence, shooting him in the head with a .45 caliber pistol. Meanwhile, Dyer attacked Otis's wife Minnie, slashing her throat. After stealing money and firearms, the pair fled, leaving Otis dead and Minnie severely injured. She later died of natural causes. Evidence, including the murder weapon buried near Matthews' home and stolen prescription medication in his possession, quickly tied him to the crime. While Dyer was sentenced to life without parole, he later recanted his testimony, claiming Matthews was innocent, but it was too late. Despite multiple appeals, Matthews' sentence remained. At 38, Matthews was executed by lethal injection. In his final moments, he thanked his family and made a lighthearted remark about the governor not calling, blending humor and gratitude as he faced his end. His case continues to highlight questions about justice, appeals, and capital punishment. Number 3. Frank Atwood. Frank Atwood's case is one that sends a chilling message, as it centers around the kidnapping and murder of 8-year-old Vicki Lynn Hoskinson in 1984. On a seemingly ordinary September day in Tucson, Arizona, Vicki set out to drop a birthday card in the mailbox. Tragically, she was abducted by Atwood, and her lifeless body was discovered months later in the desert. The brutal crime shocked the local community and left an indelible mark on her family. Atwood's legal battle stretched over 3 decades. Initially convicted of first-degree murder, his case was entangled in years of appeals, delays, and stays of execution. His execution was temporarily delayed due to complications with the lethal injection process. But the uncertainty surrounding his fate continued to linger. After spending years on death row, Atwood made a final, unusual request regarding his execution. Faced with the choice of lethal injection or lethal gas, Atwood asked to be executed by nitrogen gas instead of the usual cyanide gas, believing it would cause less pain due to his chronic back injury. This unconventional request added another layer of complexity to the ongoing debate surrounding execution methods. However, his request was denied, and Atwood was executed by lethal injection on June 8, 2022, at the age of 66. In his final moments, Atwood, who had found peace in the Greek Orthodox faith while incarcerated, was accompanied by a priest. His last words reflected both resignation and a hope for divine mercy. Atwood's case underscores the ethical and practical dilemmas surrounding capital punishment in the U.S., particularly when inmates request alternative execution methods. Number 2, Victor Fager. Victor Harry Fager's life took a grim turn, leading him to commit a shocking murder and become a notable figure in the history of the death penalty. Born in 1935, Fager led a troubled life that eventually brought him to Dubuque, Iowa in the summer of 1960, where his criminal activities escalated. Renting a room in a boarding house, he began contacting local physicians under false pretenses of needing medical care. This deception led him to Dr. Edward Bartles, whom he lured by claiming a woman required urgent attention. Once Bartles agreed to help, Fager took him to a remote location and fatally shot him in the head. Fager's motive was revealed to be robbery. He wanted access to the doctor's drugs. After fleeing the scene, he was arrested in Birmingham, Alabama, while attempting to sell Bartels' car. Fager later fabricated a story about an accomplice, a drug addict from Chicago, but no evidence supported his claims. Convicted of murder, Fager was sentenced to death. His legal team, with support from Iowa Governor Harold Hughes, petitioned President John F. Kennedy for clemency, but the request was denied. Fager awaited his execution at Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison. For his last meal, Fager made an unusual request, a single olive with the pit still intact, expressing hope that an olive tree symbolizing peace would grow from his grave. This deeply symbolic act underscored his complex personality. On March 15, 1963, Fager was executed by hanging. Authorities later found the olive pit in his pocket, a haunting reminder of his final wish, leaving a poignant legacy of both violence and a longing for peace. Number 1, Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos' name is etched into the annals of American crime as one of the most unsettling figures in history. Born in 1956, she gained infamy for a chilling murder spree along Florida's highways between 1989 and 1990. As one of the rare female serial killers, her case shocked and fascinated the nation. Wuornos murdered 7 men, all clients she encountered while working as a prostitute. Her victims, aged 40 to 65, were shot and robbed. Wuornos claimed the killings were acts of self-defense, alleging the men had assaulted her. Her first victim, Richard Mallory, was killed in November 1989. Wuornos insisted he had raped her, which she said justified his death. This pattern repeated with other victims, including David Spears, Charles Humphreys, and Troy Barres. The brutal nature of her crimes captured national attention. Wuornos was eventually apprehended after a witness provided descriptions of her and her partner, Tyria Moore. A fingerprint on a pawn shop receipt linked her to one of the murders. Following her arrest, Wuornos confessed, framing the killings as necessary acts of survival. Diagnosed with borderline personality disorder during her dramatic trial, she was still convicted and sentenced to death. Wuornos spent over a decade on death row, displaying increasingly erratic behavior and claiming her food was being tampered with to drive her to suicide. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. Her chilling final words, "I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie," hinted at her belief in reincarnation, adding a strange twist to her dark legacy. Thank you for joining us as we explored some of the most disturbing last wishes of death row inmates. These stories remind us of the complexities of the criminal justice system. If you found this video chilling, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more intriguing content.